get me started here. Hi.
All right. So where is real estate right now in this area?
Oh, wow. So, of course, we are coming into fall session, which we know August, early September is a lot of back to school, a lot of adjustments, pull back naturally. We've got elections that are going to be coming up, and people are waiting to see what's going to happen there. The feds haven't yet adjusted interest rates.
What are they waiting on?
Well, I think that depends on what side of the coin you are sitting on, right? Because if you realize that the jobs haven't been the way that they presented numbers.
Yeah, did you see the news yesterday? They overstated it by 818,000 jobs created.
That's a significant change in numbers, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like, it's just, I don't have as much money in my pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
That I know is a reality.
Yep.
I'm still working hard. I'm still doing all the things I'm required to do, but it costs me more at the gas. It costs me more when I go to the grocery store. My home energy bills cost more. I can honestly say I have had no reduction in any cost in any aspect of anything that I do in my life.
Correct. Me too.
That's the reality.
But wages have not gone up in accordance with that.
Oh, wages? What? Didn't we just talk about NAR settlement? And I get paid too much for what I do? Holy crap.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the spiral effect that I feel going on, that it's easy for somebody in a booth somewhere to sit and say, well, today we are looking at, and it doesn't impact, it doesn't matter. It's not a reality check. Talk to the people. Talk to the consumers that you're dealing with. I know the conversations I'm having with buyers, and I know 3 years ago that I had buyers who weren't really able to pull the trigger on a starter home because it had jumped from 100,000 to 150 in our area. Mm-hmm. That was still when interest rates were 3%. And then that March, interest rates went to 5.5%, and they were like, well, that even forget, I can't even look at anything at this point.
Yeah.
If that's the reality then, the reality now is worse. And it's sad because...
What are interest rates right now?
Well, I know that they've been dropping. Apparently we're down into the low 7s or high 6s. I don't think we've comfortably settled in at a 6.5% yet, but with everything that's gone on in the market, that has calmed it down. Really, what's calmed it down is the time of the year that we are, because there's not as much transactions. People had pulled back. There wasn't as much inventory, so buyers were like, well, maybe I'll wait until spring before I start this process, because nobody likes to move in the winter unless they have to.
Yeah.
So I just focus on getting the kids back to school, spring, summer, whatever, I'll deal with it then. And maybe the interest rates will have settled. We've still been waiting for the interest rates to settle because they keep going up and down like everything else. Mm-hmm. Gas prices go up and down depending on the day.
Yes.
So, with that
Usually
being said,
going into like election season, gas prices start trending down. But every time I go to the pump, it just continues to go up.
Yeah. And again, it's funny how prices can respond to a news report. Well, if they can respond to a news report, why can't they respond to the consumer's need? Mm-hmm. If we're all saying the same thing, it costs me more money each time I fill my gas tank up, well, then I'm going to drive less.
Yeah.
Or I put less in each time I fill it up. Because like you've said before, we're having to make the decision on, do I buy groceries or do I pay this bill? And so I think the other statistic that's come out is how much money is now being incurred on credit card debt.
Yeah, it's
because you're
astronomical.
Living off of advanced credit because your weekly, monthly, whatever, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever paycheck that you get isn't covering your necessities. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about just your Starbucks effect. This is necessities that people have.
Like the water bill. The water bill in Dayton, I was talking to a couple friends, and they were like, it has doubled in the last quarter. And it's just the water usage. So I never saw like a news article or something official that came out that said it was going up. But, ours went from around $400 a quarter to $660. One of my friends went from $220 consistently the entire time they've lived in this house, which has been years, to now it's $500 for one quarter.
Yeah, and that is a serious impact on your budget. And we had John McManus in here, so we know the impact that property taxes have had on people, where that's risen in some cases up to 34%.
Yeah.
I mean, you start layering in all of these costs, and I'm like you. I see all these things on social media and all of this stuff, and somebody out there in real estate world, an investor who's made all of his money and gives all this great advice and everything, he actually came out and said that it's cheaper to rent than it is to own a home. And we know rent prices in our area are through the roof. Like a starter 1-bedroom is $1,200.
Yeah.
And it goes up from there. Well, that's not what it used to be. If you paid $850 for a 1-bedroom before, and now it's $1,200 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And then your utility costs, you go back to this, everything is compounded at higher cost. It's just, but the wages aren't. The earnings aren't increasing at the same level as all of these expenses.
Correct, yeah.
That's the disconnect. So boil that all down to real estate. And let's talk about that, because what ends up happening is you have all of these negatives impacting life, and where we still have low inventory, our low inventory now is twice as much as what it's been. So when we were talking originally at the start of when we started this podcast, we had less than 1,000 homes for sale in our immediate area. That's 8 counties that we typically, as the Dayton board, roll over, okay? In those 8 counties, less than 1,000 homes at any given week was available for sale. And it is now up to 1,774.
So it's almost doubled.
So it's basically doubled. And yet, homes are staying on the market a little longer.
What's the average time a home is on the market right now?
So right now, you're seeing the average home is staying on about 45 to 63 days. So it's creeped up.
Yeah.
They still, a good home at the right price in the right area with the right features is still going to go under contract right away.
Yeah.
It's just whether or not that first deal actually closes, or they have to take a backup, or it goes back on the market, and you see that turnaround. So the closing time is taking longer. Closing time is running between 60 to 80 days. And that's unusual.
Yeah.
From being in a seller's market to
when it was like 15 days.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of just wanted to go through some of this because, the prices of the homes obviously are what's driving people to either pull the trigger or not because of the interest rates. So if you can afford a starter home at $100,000 with a 3% interest rate, but you can't afford that same starter home for $150,000 because the interest rate went to 5%, and we're still talking 6.5%, 7% is the interest rate, they're not in the market. They're not looking. So you're talking about the people who are in a home that may need to downsize or upsize because they already have equity in the market that they're looking. But your new first-time home buyers are out. And that's where now we hear this advent going back in time of down payment assistance.
Yeah.
So those programs that come out, so back in 08 and 09, when we had down payment assistance, the first one that came out that a lot of people got back into the market and was really going at it, interest rates were between 5 and 7 at that time.
So kind of the same.
Kind of the same. They rolled out an $8,000 program to allow people to get into a home. That one was forgivable, so they didn't have to repay it back. And that one tapped out, and then the next round was a $6,000 tax down payment tax credit. And that caveat was that you had to own it for 5 years, or you were paying back a portion of it. So if you only owned it for 3 years, then you were paying back a portion of that money, almost half of it. done through your taxes and all of that. People who use the down payment money typically stayed in it the 5 years. Because if you fast forward in what we went through with the change in the market and everything, people were trying to hold on to the value so that they could build that equity. So now the people that bought back then, they've been tapping out when interest rates were 3%. They refinanced, they got the money out, they did all of these different things. But we see inventory starting to build up, which is causing a little bit of alarm. Not the right alarm, but a little bit of alarm for people to say, well, wait a minute, we have more housing inventory. Why aren't we getting the sales? Well, we're not getting the sales because you have all these negative economic impacts, right?
Yes.
And the interest rates are still high because the feds haven't dropped them.
Right.
It's naturally come down because of all the other negative impacts, but the feds could spur it to keep it going in a positive direction. So if they do that, then yes, do I see people come back in and we go from 1,700 back down to under 1,000? Likely. But I think there are going to be other things that come into play on it because your resources of money, available money on hand, because the buyer has money out of pocket that they have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're using credit card to offset it, that becomes a debt ratio when they go to the lender. It's just never easy.
Right.
So our house prices have continued to go up. And what I did was I pulled, just to give you an idea, because where is affordable housing? Affordable housing is different depending on who you are.
Yeah.
What a person who makes $15 an hour can afford is different than a person who makes $100,000 a year.
Yep.
It's simple math, right?
Yeah.
And the lenders do basic financial analysis to say, where do you qualify? What can you do? So the city of Dayton, the average list price on the homes for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home is sitting at $140,000. And in the city of Dayton, at this time when I pulled these numbers, they had 247 houses for sale.
And this is Dayton proper.
Dayton proper.
Doesn't include townships.
It's not the outer areas. It's not Kettering. It's not Inglewood. It's not any of those other suburban areas. It's specific to Dayton Public School system. So city of Dayton proper. And I thought it would be interesting to know what are some of the differences in those average price per homes. So when somebody says they're driven by price, that drives them to a specific area.
Yeah.
I can't steer them to this area or this area. But if they say they're driven by price, then only things that are going to come up in their search are the things that meet the price requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, so it kind of feels like it's steering, but it's not. It's the system that's saying if you're driven by price, then here's where you are. If somebody doesn't know what area they want to live in and it's price driven, then they may get from 14 different counties around our area.
Yeah.
Right? Our 8 specific ones, but then there's outlying areas that sometimes list in our website too. But we go from Dayton to Middletown. Middletown average home, $244,000.
Wow.
That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. Now the difference is in Dayton, when I pulled that, there is one home that fell outside of this criteria, and it's a downtown condo listed at $515,000.
Okay.
So it doesn't fit the average home. It doesn't fit the Dayton dynamic. In Middletown, there were 3 homes listed in the $500,000. There's 1 home listed at $799,000. There's 3 homes that are $1 million plus, and there's 1 home. It's a development site that's listed for $6 million. That's Middletown.
So that's bringing that average price way up.
That would change the average price if you had those numbers in there.
Well, Middletown also has some farmland.
Correct.
That is being developed.
Right.
Or the potential to be developed.
Yes. And so what people typically will ask is if they're a starter home and they want to be under $200,000, where can I go? Well, you can go into Dayton. You have 247 homes. If you go to Middletown, out of the 42 homes that are listed there, 15 are under $200,000. So again, what drives you? If you have to be within a certain amount of time for where you work, then that's going to drive what neighborhoods you're going to look at too.
Yeah.
Inglewood, average price of home is $232,000 for a same 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Huber Heights, average price of a home $255,000. And we've got Miami.
Huber Heights has a lot of new developments also, though.
They do. They have, and that's one of the lots up there is listed for over 400,000. I'm like, what? For a lot?
Yeah.
Doesn't even include the house? That's kind of crazy. And their development site is, they have a 3-acre development site that's listed at 500,000. Somebody that's a small developer wanting to do something, that's a good buy.
Mm-hmm.
If your home price average is 255,000, you can get the 3-acre lot for 500,000. It's probably a deal.
Yeah.
Because there is so much boom up there. They've got all the industry and the commute time, easy access to Wright Pat.
Yeah.
A lot of pluses there. All right, then I pulled Miamisburg. That's one of our southern areas. Southern area listed average price for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath is $269,000. And you see we start going up in prices now.
Mm-hmm.
Kettering is $282,000. Centerville is $375,000 as an average.
Wow.
And Oakwood, of course, is $398,000. So Oakwood is more of a centralized, just outside of Dayton region, but it's that 2-mile radius that you're so familiar with.
Yeah.
And home prices, I mean, you were lucky if you could find anything under $300,000 there, and that was years ago.
Yeah.
So that aspect hasn't changed. It's just that entry point, and then as a buyer, what's the interest rate that you're paying on it? So interest rate is going to drive your monthly payment.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not the dollar amount overall that you're thinking of, well, I need to be under $200,000. As Justin said, people will say, well, I want to be all in at less than $1,500 a month. All right, we're probably renting.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
You just need a 2-bedroom, maybe we can find that. But you need a 3-bedroom as a rental, you're in excess of $1,500 in most of our communities.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality.
And this area has always been kind of highlighted across the nation as the most affordable to live in.
And we are. If you compare these numbers with California or Florida or New York or some of those areas, then absolutely. Even Arizona, which I'm familiar with, and what the prices are there, yeah, our numbers are far below on the average cost. But there are other factors that come in. If you're in Arizona and you work in tech, you're making a 6-figure income.
Yeah.
So paying a higher price on your home or your rent or your mortgage, whatever, is more easy for you to do, right?
Yeah.
It's within your range because you're making more money. But we're Midwest, and so those tech jobs, while we're starting to see them come to our area, I don't think we meet that same income level as what they pay in California or Arizona.
True.
So that doesn't quite adjust and account for what they're paying.
Yeah. So back to down payments for homes. So I did see that one of the presidential candidates is part of her pitch is $25,000 for every home buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the kind of like other side of that is, well, that's just going to raise the home prices $25,000. Is that what you've typically seen in the past, or is it going to be able to bring buyers in?
So it's interesting because we have, just like these different communities and everything I mentioned here on the average prices, the communities really try to keep a pulse check on what's going on in their market with real estate. Because if they have new home owners coming in, that's money that comes to their community.
Mm-hmm.
That feeds the schools, that feeds the infrastructure, that feeds all the things that a community needs to be vibrant. So Kettering has rolled out a down payment assistance program. And the city of Dayton, oddly enough, before this announcement was made, had rolled out their version of a down payment assistance. So in order to qualify for these down payment assistance, the ones in our communities, is that you have to be a first-time home buyer, which means not that it has to be your first time ever, but the first time in the last 3 years being on title of a home. So let's say back when I was with somebody else and we bought a house and we were on the mortgage together and we sold it, we're no longer together, and so I haven't been on a mortgage per se in the last 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now considered a first-time buyer under that program, even though I have owned a home before.
Yeah.
And so I meet that criteria. Well, then typically what you see is the criteria of your earnings, your income. Where are you on the poverty level? How more are you or how less are you? And that's determined then if you qualify for the down payment assistance. So if you are a first-time home buyer, but you have a great job, you may not qualify for that first-time home buyer assistance because your income is going to be at a level that exceeds that allowed amount for this program. The other thing that they like to do is, in order to go through this, you have to buy through a certain entity, or you have to go through a particular type of training for ownership, home ownership program with the county, so that they can say, yes, you know what it means. They really want to see that financially you understand. You have to make your payments to keep your house.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. So there are specific things that are required in these down home money or the down home payment programs, and everyone is always going to be different. But the caveat to the city of Dayton is that you have to use that to buy within these 5 underserved neighborhoods that are blighted and having issues where the people have left them and houses are sitting vacant and abandoned, not cared for.
Well, they left them for a reason.
Exactly. So the city's willing to give you $25,000 if you financially qualify and if you're a first-time home buyer and you're willing to come into this area. Well, that's a very difficult thing as a realtor for me to try to offer to somebody who's looking for a starter home. Mm-hmm. Somebody who wants a starter home is looking for infrastructure. They're looking for a school system, usually. They're looking for the aspect of a safety or walkability or commute.
Yeah.
And they're looking for what amenities does the neighborhood offer. If there's not a grocery store close by and there's not a hospital close by, I'm going to say most buyers are questioning if that's where they want to go.
Yeah. I do like that. I know, like, Over the Rhine and East Nashville did the gentrification,
Yes.
10 years ago, where it did take those
Underutilized areas.
And really put them next to, like, there's now $700,000 homes next to Section 8 homes.
Right.
And I feel like there's just kind of a stigma that you have to keep your home up.
Right.
And that's on all levels, whether you're paying $50 a month for your rent or you're paying your $3,000 a month mortgage.
Right. And that's where I think the pride, we've talked about driving the area, making sure the house that you're looking for is in the area that you're comfortable, that works for you and your specific needs. Everybody is different on what they like or don't like, but one thing I look at is the upkeep of the block.
Yeah.
The area in the alleyway, if you're having to come in and out of your garage through an alley access, is it trashed? Is it dirty? Is it piled up? Or is it nice and clean where you feel like this is where you want to come home to, right?
Yeah.
Those are all things that really are the hidden messaging as to if this is something that would present well for buyers. But I think if you are offering a first-time home down assistance program, a down payment assistance program for a first-time home buyer, then why are all these different caveats?
Yeah.
You're trying to spur the market, then why are you stipulating where that money is allowed to be used?
Yeah.
Why are you stipulating that they have to make less than in order to use this? If you're saying you need to spur the market and your feds haven't come in and adjusted the rates, then why are you giving away money when the easy fix would be to lower the interest rates?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm not an economics person.
The only caveat that I could see is that it needs to be an actual lived-in home instead of somebody just buying up a bunch of rental properties.
Which is the other stipulation that's on there. So when typically the first-time home buyer programs aren't going to be something that an investor can use, because they don't meet that qualifying, has to be owner occupied. Mm-hmm. So that is immediately off of the table, and an investor isn't a first-time buyer in most cases unless they're new to being an investor.
Yeah.
So they aren't taking that money away from individuals, unlike foreclosures that are bought up by the big house that can come in and swoop up and take them all at a discounted price, and the individuals don't even get an opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So owner occupied is a given on any of the programs that are being offered.
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it changes because we're really not into election season yet. We're just kind of dipping our toes into it. And if the feds drop the rates or how this goes, and see if it picks up with the weather. It's crazy how there's so many factors.
Yes. And so we talk about, and here's the dynamics of things, is that when we're talking about something like this, information is only good for like now, because tomorrow the numbers could all be different.
Yeah.
We talk about low inventory. We need to build. We need to bring in new housing. Well, here's the cycle that continues to repeat, is that we say that, and it takes time for the builders to get the permits, to get the developments, to get the plans, to get the people interested in, and to build. So that can't happen overnight.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, you got them geared up, and they're doing this. And in this time that we've been talking, we've doubled our numbers of inventory. So now all of a sudden, we're going to influx it with these finished homes that might be ready for next spring when everybody's ready. And instead of being a seller market, we'll be sitting in a buyer market. I didn't just make a prediction, but I see the writing on the wall, because that's when all of this is going to start coming to head. And if we've had a Fed rate decrease, and or we've got these first-time home programs that are out there, and suddenly now you've flooded the market and you've got all this inventory, that's when prices start to adjust. That's when buyers take control and it becomes a buyer's market, and sellers are back sitting on the sideline saying, well, what the heck do I need to do to sell my house?
Yeah.
Because now, instead of the buyer only having one or two options that fall within their parameters, now maybe they have 15.
Yeah.
Instead of the seller who was, instead of one or two buyers, I have 15 offers. Guess what? Real estate is a cycle, and it is continually evolving, and it goes around and around and around and around. And so everybody wants to start talking negative about investors and not doing this and not doing that, and it needs to be owner occupied. But when you have all these houses that are sitting out there and money isn't coming in, that's when it opens the door for the investors. And we go right back into the cycle.
So it sounds like, based on what you just said, our tip for our listeners would be to get your finances in order for the upcoming market on when you can be first and get the most pick.
Yes. So if you want to buy a home and you don't want to be in competing offers, then buying in the winter is a smart idea, because it's only going to be the people who really have to move who have to buy in the winter, because it's not just anybody out there looking. If you wait till the spring season, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be behind it, and you're going to be in competition as a buyer, because there are going to be more buyers in the market.
Yeah.
If these things fall into place, that's going to be what happens. So yes, if you want to buy, be ahead of it, pay a little more now, pay a little higher interest rate now, be in line for a refinance if that's the case, but get the house that you want now instead of waiting and then maybe potentially losing out.
Yeah. Like Justin says, marry the house, date the rate.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Hi, Justin, by the way. Haven't seen you in a while. When are you coming back on the podcast?
Right, get in here.